Good morning, everyone. My name is Hadar Harris. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Human Rights and Humanitarian Law, and I'd like to welcome all of you here in the room today, as well as all of you watching via live webcast from Moscow and Hawaii and Doha and places beyond. Today we're here to convene a conference around the Obama administration and human rights. President Barack Obama came into office on January 20th, 2009 with extraordinarily high hopes pinned on him by people from around the world. He was young and dynamic, clearly a man of profound thought and intellectual capacity. His election as the first African-American president in U.S. history was groundbreaking. His personal narrative was one exuding multiculturalism, respect for the other, and human rights. Most importantly, though, maybe, he wasn't George W. Bush. At the time, America's reputation in the world as a leader in the struggle for human rights was shaken, and Barack Obama used the fact of his difference, his narrative, his newness, to reinforce the fact that he would make a change from the previous administration. Weeks after his election, President-elect Barack Obama spoke on International Human Rights Day, December 10th, and said, "When the United States stands up for human rights by example at home and by effort abroad, we align ourselves with men and women around the world who struggle for the right to speak their minds, to choose their leaders, and to be treated with dignity and respect. Let us rededicate ourselves to the advancement of human rights and freedoms for all, and pledge always to live by the ideals that we promote to the world." When applied to the field of human rights, one of Barack Obama's campaign slogans, "Change we can believe in," raised the expectations of the human rights community. President Obama has been met with tremendous challenges over these past 2 years. The global economic crisis, recession in the U.S., massive natural disasters in different parts of the world, and in the U.S., even today, we think about the people in the Midwest suffering from really difficult storms. Ongoing wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, revolutions throughout the Middle East and North Africa, yet there have been opportunities as well. President Obama has made important moves in the field of human rights. He immediately repudiated the use of torture by the U.S. upon coming into office. He signed the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. The U.S. joined the UN Human Rights Council and is re-engaged to some degree with the International Criminal Court, and they've even lifted a 22-year travel ban for HIV-positive people to visit the United States. And yet, Guantanamo remains open. The U.S. remains the only country, with Somalia, not to have ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and only one of 6 in the world not to have ratified CEDAW, the Women's Human Rights Convention. This conference is meant to provide an objective examination of how the Obama administration has lived up to its commitments on human rights in the first 2 years, to look at the successes of the administration, and to examine how it can more effectively leave a legacy of enhancing and promoting human rights here at home and abroad. There are 20 panels and 4 plenary sessions planned over the next 2 days. Topics are wide-ranging, from re-examining the idea of the global war on terror to the economic crisis in human rights, from looking at business and conflict zones to revisiting civil rights as human rights. The panels look at human rights both overseas and here at home, and there are also a series of hands-on human rights workshops during each breakout session, which provides something a little bit different, presenting cutting-edge projects and programs that seek to promote human rights. More than 80 experts will be speaking over the next 2 days, and we're so gratified by their and your participation. I encourage you to engage with them in discussion and with thoughtful and respectful debate during the course of the next 2 days. As we get started, I wanted to just make a few announcements. Today, we will be at the Washington College of Law, and we're happy to have you here. Tomorrow, we will be at the AU main campus, and we hope that tonight you will join us for a reception at the Katzen Arts Center. I need to ask all of you to please turn your cell phones to vibrate, at least. And if you need email access, we have cards with the passcode at the registration desk, and you can ask there. Tomorrow, the code will be different. There are conference staff scattered around with red T-shirts. They will be able to answer all of your questions. And in all sessions, please speak into the microphones as we are recording and webcasting all of the sessions. Finally, we are in finals and reading period here at American University, and so we would just like to please ensure that people are a little bit quiet in the hallways as students are studying still. I want to make a quick thank you to our conference staff, to Louise Weissman, who is our conference coordinator, to Kate Fenner, standing in the well, and to John Rogos and our entire staff, to Jennifer Dabson and our special events staff here at the law school, and to our faculty organizing committee. I see many of you here. Can you please stand to be recognized? Thank you very much for all of your hard work. And finally, to the deans and the provost of American University for all of your support over the course of the planning of this conference. It's my privilege to introduce President Neil Kerwin, the president of American University. President Kerwin's been a member of the AU faculty since 1975, but before that, he was a student. You say it's like the, right. He graduated from American University, and he's led as our president since August 2005, when he was acting president, then interim president, and then the permanent president as of September 1st, 2007. He served as provost prior to that. He's nationally recognized scholar and teacher in public policy, teaches courses in administrative process policy implementation and American government. We are so privileged and proud to have him as our president, and we are so thankful for you to be here today. Thank you, President Kerwin.
Thank you, Professor. I want to welcome all of you to American University and to the Washington College of Law to this truly extraordinary conference. We believe it's the first of its kind, and it will be the first of many examples of cross-university collaboration on issues that we consider not only vital to the world, but vital to our mission. This conference represents both a capability and a commitment. Fully 150 members of this faculty throughout the university consider human rights significant in their scholarly, professional, or artistic portfolios. That gives you a sense of both the capability of this institution to address the issues that are central to this conference's themes, and the commitment that we've made in the university's strategic plan to ensure that human rights remains an essential element of this university's scholarly and educational mission and part of our service to our broader community and our commitment to social responsibility. This conference, led as it was by the Center for Human Rights and Humanitarian Law and its director who just spoke with you, Hadar Harris, is an example of what an institution of this magnitude and stature can do when cooperation is the norm. Every school and college at the university, members of their faculties contributed to this conference in meaningful ways. The deans came together under the direction of the provost to ensure the resources were available to make it the type of gathering worthy of your time and attention. The response has been extraordinary. 42 embassies have indicated some level of involvement and participation in the event, and conference participation needed to be closed early because of the extraordinary response. It's a manifestation of the importance of the issue, but it's also a manifestation of the quality of the program that Professor Hadar and her team have brought together for your education and your illumination today. I particularly am impressed by the conference program. It's an indication of the maturity of human rights as both an academic field and an area of practice. The bringing together of 6 schools and colleges was not gratuitous. It takes that level of cooperation to bring the full intellectual weight to a field that now touches just every discipline of any consequence in higher education. I especially want to thank also Maria Otero, our Undersecretary of State, who took time from an extraordinarily busy schedule, not just to be here with us, but to signal the support and the assistance of the Obama administration in making this conference possible. So, to the Center and its work, congratulations and thank you. To the Provost, who will give a bit more oversight on how this thing came together at the luncheon speech. Thank you for your leadership, Scott. To the Deans, the collaboration really has been extraordinary. And to everyone here, I wish you both an informative and an exciting 2 days.
Now it's my privilege also to introduce Dean Claudio Grossman, who will introduce Undersecretary Otero. Claudio Grossman is a professor of law and dean of American University Washington College of Law. He has, in his tenure as dean since 1995, fostered a tremendous sense of dynamism and innovation in the law school. But his personal and professional commitment to human rights is deep and wide. In 2003, Dean Grossman was elected to the United Nations Committee Against Torture. He was elected its chair in 2008, and last year, in 2010, was unanimously re-elected as its chair. He was a member of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights from 1993 to 2001, and was twice elected its president, first in 1996 and again in 2001. He has traveled the world on human rights missions, and his writing, publications, and the awards that he's received for his human rights work are extensive. It's our privilege, and my privilege personally, to work with him on a day-to-day basis and to have him as our dean, and I look forward to his introductions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Hadar, for the introduction. I'm very pleased to be here accompanying the President of the University and Provost Scott and my fellow deans and colleagues in American University. This conference is an act of imagination and commitment. As the President of the University was saying, we have in this university a passion with the field of human rights, and not just in the form of a few scattered offerings in the curriculum, but defined as a central component of a mission of the university. If you want to see an example of mainstreaming concerned with values of human dignity, that's American University exemplifies that commitment. But the idea to realize a campus-wide initiative and bring everyone together and is a new idea that required a tremendous effort. Provost has, since his appointment, Provost Scott Bass has created incentive and space for initiative of this sort, and we are here also because of his leadership in this sense. We're welcoming you in a law school that is a proud member of American University community and of the tradition of American University. And the law school contributes to the institution by engaging the city, the nation, and the world through legal education. You should know, we offer over 30 courses per semester in human rights. Perhaps this is the richest curriculum in an academic institution in the area of human rights, with a specialized degree in human rights, a master's in human rights, and PhDs or SJDs in the same direction. The faculty of the law school is an example of, again, engagement through scholarship and through service with important values of human dignity. There are a lot of programs here in human rights, and Maria Otero would be interesting to know because of her own commitment with this. We have an anti-trafficking program, for example, a war crimes tribunal program, a center for human rights, an academy for human rights, clinics, and so forth and so on. In the summer, we get over 200 people from all over the world that come here to our academy to study in 14 courses in English and 9 courses in Spanish. And we have a competition in human rights that attracts over 110 law schools, and the only one in the world in English, Spanish, or Portuguese, as a matter of fact. And the idea is to convene people around these important values in human dignity. The important commitment of the law school and the university is what universities are supposed to do, to create a space and domain to debate and to discuss and to analyze different issues. And from that perspective, our conference and the contributions of the Obama administration on human rights is so central. I mean, this is what universities are supposed to do, to come together and analyze in a pluralistic fashion the key issues of our time. Well, we could not have chosen anyone better to start our conference than the Undersecretary of State for Democracy and Global Affairs, Maria Otero. That's the only, perhaps, name that I will pronounce today without any accent. Ms. Otero brings tremendous knowledge, expertise, and a rich background to this office that bodes well and has for the field of human dignity and human rights. She was formerly the president and CEO of Action International, a pioneer and leader in microfinance, working in 25 countries around the globe. Under her tenure, Action's networks of microfinance institutions expanded its reach from serving almost 500,000 people to over 3.7 million through a combined portfolio that grew from 274 million to 3.6 billion. Well, we're building a new building, Maria, so we can use your expertise in raising this amount of money for such an important endeavor. She's a leading voice on sustainable microfinance, publishing extensively on the subject and speaking throughout the world on microfinance, women issues, and poverty alleviation. Before that, she was an economist for Latin America for the Women in Development Office of USAID, and she also served for 5 years at the Center for Development and Population Activity. In June 2006, she was appointed by the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, then to the UN Advisors Group on Inclusive Financial Sector. She has chaired the board of Bread for the World and also served on the boards of the Calvert Foundation, Public Welfare Foundation, Inter-American Foundation, and Bragg Folding of Bangladesh. She was born in La Paz, Bolivia, and she is currently the highest-ranking Hispanic official at the State Department and the first Latina undersecretary in its history. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and she was appointed by Newsweek as one of the United States' 20 most influential women in October 2005, and was one of the Hispanic Business Magazine's Elite Women of 2007. She was honored by Notre Dame with the Distinguished Service in Latin America Award, and she also received the Ellis Island Medal of Honor. She also an MA in Literature from the University of Maryland and an MA in International Relations from the Johns Hopkins Nice School for Advanced International Studies. The fact that we're not going to take against you, the fact that you went to Johns Hopkins and not American, and an honorary doctorate of Human Letters from Dartmouth College. She was also a professor at SAIS. She was sworn in August 10, 2009, and she oversees and coordinates U.S. foreign relations and policy on impressive array of global issues, including democracy, human rights, labor, environment, ocean, health and science, population, refugees and migration, and monitoring and combating trafficking in person. She also serves as the special coordinator for Tibetan issues. So we're very pleased and honored to have her here, and without further ado, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudio. Claudio doesn't know that in this country I pronounce my name Maria Otero, but it's very good to have it said Maria Otero. It is really such a privilege to be introduced not only by a dear friend and colleague, but someone like Claudio who has really dedicated his life to the important issues of human rights and who is really an inspiration to so many people. And it's also wonderful to be here among friends and colleagues. I know a number of people here, but I certainly want to recognize President Neil Kerwin, the Provost Scott Bass. There are other deans that are here from the different schools. Professor Hadar Harris for this wonderful opportunity to be here. There are going to be, and there may be members of the diplomatic community here, and all of you who are working on human rights, your students, you are engaged in these issues. As many of you know, I'm no stranger to this campus. I've been on this campus many times, and it's in part because, and I want to recognize Joe Eldridge, who is the chaplain of American University. He's also very well known for his work in human rights. And he's conveniently and really fortunate for me, my husband. So I'm convinced that some of the reasons that Secretary Clinton asked me to take this job is that she knew I would be accountable to her on human rights, but that I would also be accountable to Joe on these issues. So I think she wanted both sides to be addressed. It really has been an honor to serve in the Obama administration. I've been with the administration now for 20 months. And as Claudio mentioned, as Undersecretary of State for Democracy and Global Affairs, I oversee U.S. foreign policy in a wide array of human security issues. And among those are all the ones that are related to democracy and human rights, protection of human rights, promotion of democratic principles, pursuit of the rule of law, justice, civilian security. And I'm very fortunate to work very closely with the Assistant Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, Mike Posner, who is also somebody that many of you know, again, a very respected voice and activist in human rights. He's in Beijing right now, otherwise he would be here with us at this very important and significant conference. And I'm very pleased to be able to represent the Obama administration and share with you a few thoughts about its work. In fact, what I'd like to do today is share with you 3 ways in which the Obama administration in its first 2 years is promoting human rights around the world. The first one is we're elevating human rights through increased engagement with Muslim communities around the world. The second is we are bolstering human rights with unprecedented support for civil society around the world, including the vulnerable and the marginalized groups that include women, LGBT, individuals, disabled persons, and religious minorities. And third, I want to talk about how we are engaging on important human rights issues in the multilateral system that exists today. In each of these approaches, we are drawing not only from the strength of the U.S. human rights record, but also from the lessons that we have learned and the challenges that we have faced in our own history. Any discussion of human rights today is set against the backdrop of the historic change that we are observing in the Middle East and in North Africa. All of us are witnesses right now to a monumental wave of democracy in action. And among those leading these movements are activists, advocates, students, community leaders, all those who will be the next generation of human rights leaders and scholars in their own countries. And even today, they are teaching all of us, and they are reminding all of us of the power and the potential of social movements and of the strength of the human spirit. In June 2009, President Obama stood before a crowd in Cairo, Egypt, to declare a new beginning for the United States' relation with Muslim communities. His message was that the values of the United States and those of Islam are not exclusive, but instead that all of us share universal principles of justice, tolerance, and respect for the dignity of all human beings. The President placed a marker in American foreign policy, one that set a new course for our engagement with Muslim communities. Under the Obama administration, we have seen a shift in the dialogue towards mutuality and partnership. We have challenged discrimination and intolerance towards Muslims, and we have fought to protect their religious freedom, both home and abroad. The U.S. government has condemned acts of irreligious tolerance, whether they are acts against the Copts in Egypt, the Buddhists in Tibet, or the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan. The assassination last month of Pakistani minister Shahbaz Bhatti, who I had met with on several occasions, was a tragic reminder that none of us are immune from this trend. Violence in the name of religion is an insult to religion itself. Any society that does not protect religious freedoms cripples the pursuit of the stability and the prosperity of its people. 18 months after President Obama's Cairo speech, students who may have been in the audience made their way to Tahrir Square. With the same spirit that breathes life into democracies around the world, the people of Egypt found their voices and took their demands to the street. And the revolutions continue today. The revolutions born of frustration and inspired by the pursuit of human rights. We see the citizens of Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Bahrain, and Libya who have staked their claim to that which we all believe in, that human rights are the fundamental freedoms enshrined in the Universal Declarations of Human Rights. Our ability to preserve and promote the foundations of democracy, such as the freedom of expression, directly relates to the second way in which the Obama administration is promoting our human rights agenda, and that is through bolstering civil society. As Secretary Clinton said yesterday in Krakow, the United States' very own democratic experiment was a product of its civil society. We were a people before we were a nation. And civil society not only helped create our nation, it has helped sustain and power our nation into the future. We are not alone in this experience. From Eastern Europe to Southeast Asia, civil society groups have played an essential role in bolstering democracy and spurring on democratic transition and its advancement. They also play a crucial role in keeping their governments accountable. So we have enhanced our support for civil society, groups that are working to improve democracy in their own countries. Under the Obama administration, diplomacy in the name of human rights and democracy is no longer limited to conversations between governments. It's a conversation with people, driven by the shared goal of achieving the best for people. Secretary Clinton at the State Department has made engagement of civil society a defining feature of our democracy agenda. Our embassies and missions today around the world are charged with developing strategies to support and protect civil society. On February 16th, just a bit over a month, 2 months ago, Secretary Clinton announced the launch of a new strategic dialogue with civil society, which brings together representatives from all U.S. government agencies to work with civil society groups for regular consultations, just as we have now in strategic dialogues that we hold with partner governments. Our engagement with civil society addresses the growing trend in many regions where we are seeing a crackdown and the isolation of civil society organizations. Even in nations that call themselves democracies, fear of opposition, fear of agitation has resulted in the elimination of citizens' rights to advocate, to organize, or even to exercise the human rights and fundamental freedoms such as the right to vote. That is why it is essential that we work with civil society in a very intentional way. And that is also why we have established a Lifeline Fund, which supports embattled NGOs around the world. This fund provides them with emergency assistance to embattled local NGOs so that they can pay for legal bills to replace office equipment that security police may have taken away, or when security police stands in their way. Through this fund, international NGOs will work with local NGOs to fight back against repressive operating environments. As we witness a disturbing trend of laws that restrict the movement and the work of nonprofit and NGOs, we must redouble our effort to directly support those who are working through peaceful means to improve society. Because when civil society is intimidated and the rule of law is undermined, human rights, citizen safety, and democratic principles are diminished as well. Our support of civil society and its pursuit for human rights also means that we are elevating our commitment to the marginalized and to the disenfranchised and to the vulnerable groups within civil society. These are women, these are persons with disabilities, ethnic minorities, and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals. For example, despite bearing the brunt of society's political and economic challenges, women across the Americas continue to drive democratic change and social equality. I have met with women in Brazil who are fighting the scourge of human trafficking, as Claudio mentioned. Women in Guatemala are raising their voices in the name of freedom of speech, and they are protecting the place of human rights defenders in that society. In Colombia, women are defending the rights of the more than 3 million internally displaced people. And in Cuba, the Damas de Blanco was recently honored for its work in fighting for fundamental freedoms. Yet despite these heroic examples, women remain marginalized. They remain ruled by outdated legislation, by lackluster law enforcement. Even as we gather here today, women in the Middle East are struggling to make their voices heard in the nascent democratic processes and transitions that we are seeing. As countries seek to establish more stable and respected governments, the role of women will be tantamount to their success. In countries like Uganda and Honduras, men and women are subjected to horrific violence, persecution, and threats simply because of who they are or who they love. Such hatred poisons so-called free societies. The United States has responded by condemning these actions, and I have personally addressed this issue at the highest levels in Africa and in Latin America. In Honduras, the United States is working closely with the Justice Ministry to establish a special office devoted to investigating the unsolved murders of 30 LGBT people. In the Human Rights Council last month, the U.S. co-led with Colombia and Slovenia the international lobbying effort for a joint statement to end acts of violence against LGBT people, which was signed by 85 countries. That's 18 countries more than signed any previous UN engagement on LGBT issues. This was also the first statement to call for the decriminalization of LGBT status. Most recently, President Obama announced with Brazilian President Rousseff their support for the establishment of an OAS Special Rapporteur for the human rights of LGBT people within the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights. This Special Rapporteur would be the first of its kind in the international system. As Secretary Clinton unequivocally declared in June and reiterated at the recent launch of the 2010 Human Rights Report, the United States government believes that gay rights are human rights. We will continue to challenge antiquated standards and laws of society that allow for the erosion of basic human rights, because no free society can thrive when its government or its people are repressing those with the least power and least influence. The Obama administration also, as Claudio pointed out, also recognized early on the need for more persons with disability, for more work with persons with disabilities. In 2009, the President sent a clear signal with his commitment to protect disability rights by signing the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And Secretary Clinton has followed this up by appointing a special advisor on international disability rights who is traveling around the world, and she's working to ensure that equal access and opportunity is afforded to people, especially for people who have physical or mental limitations. Now, the signing of the 2009 Convention on Persons with Disabilities is one example of the Obama administration's re-engagement with the international community on human rights in particular, which brings me to the third point that I want to make this morning. Early on in the administration, the President and Secretary Clinton set a new course for the human rights agenda, one that emphasized partnership and mutual respect. And in a bold move, moving away from past administrations, we joined the United Nations Human Rights Council. Since joining the Council, we have worked to make it a more effective institution, and we have using as an important platform our effort to advance the universal human rights protections and to address the pressing human rights concerns around the world. Even though the Council continues an unfair and an imbalanced bias against Israel, the U.S. presence in the Human Rights Councils has made a difference in the way that it is working. Through increased engagement in the Human Rights Council, we have spearheaded special sessions on Libya, on the Ivory Coast, to establish commissions of inquiry that will investigate alleged violations on international human rights laws. Tomorrow we'll participate in a special session on Syria. We've worked on Muslim majority countries, with those countries, to reframe the debate of the so-called defamation of religions into a shared effort to combat religious intolerance. We have taken important steps to support the human rights of LGBT persons through this mechanism. And we've passed resolutions for the freedom of assembly and for the freedom of expression. In keeping with our focus on civil society that I've mentioned earlier, the United States led an effort along with emerging democratic powers to create the first ever UN Special Rapporteur to protect freedom of assembly and association. This rapporteur will monitor crackdown on civil society groups and advance the protection of the right to freedom of assembly and association through its vigilant exposure of states and how they conduct themselves in this area. We have worked with Kyrgyzstan to draft a resolution addressing human rights abuses and related problems in the wake of killings and abuses in June 2010. And we have highlighted human rights problems in Burma, North Korea, the Sudan, through efforts in the Council, through its rapporteurs, through its independent experts. As in this administration has expanded its own U.S. multilateral engagement as a tool for promoting democracy, we've also sought to lead by the power of example, drawing from our own history and illustrating the challenges that we have faced in human rights, as well as the opportunities that we have in advancing democracy and protecting human rights in our own country. When it was our turn in the Human Rights Council to develop the Universal Periodic Review, the Obama administration undertook a year-long consultative process around this country with American civil society organizations. We consulted with them, we spoke with them, and from them we drew the report. And as part of the review, once it was examined at the Human Rights Council, we responded to over 228 recommendations that were made by 56 countries on the U.S. human rights practices. As a result, we are trying to set a high bar on our review process by other countries of the Universal Periodic Review. But we have also in that process strengthened our own ties with our own civil society organizations. By recognizing our own imperfections in the area of human rights, we are better able to find ways to improve our domestic policies in areas such as immigration, homelessness, healthcare, in conjunction with those that are working to protect human rights. And we can share with other countries the lessons that we have learned in the course of making our democracies stronger and more vibrant. We are also pursuing our human rights agenda by strengthening our partnership with emerging democracies around the globe, if we can call them emerging. It is not a coincidence that President Obama has made major visits to countries like India, Indonesia, Brazil in the past 6 months. These countries are examples of democracies who have emerged globally, and they are leaders both in their own region and in the world. In each of these stops, the President has partnered with these countries to see that we are working together to extol the virtues of democracy and human rights in the regions and around the world. In India, for example, we have sought to highlight its excellence in administering elections. India mobilizes millions of civil servants, I think close to 10 million civil servants, to administer their own domestic elections for over 730 million voters. The Indians are now sharing their experience and their expertise in other countries like Nigeria, where the electorate just went to the polls in a historic presidential election, which by many means, and I was in Nigeria for 3 times as they move forward towards this election, they have demonstrated a significant improvement to the 2007 very fraudulent elections, even though they are still suffering from incidents of violence. India has also sent experts to Egypt, where they hope to have their first free election soon. South Africa has also had a similar impressive history of breaking the yoke of apartheid and establishing a strong democracy in Africa. President Obama visited in Indonesia, where the Bali Democracy Forum, created by the Indonesians, is becoming a model of regional discussion on rights and elections. In addition, we're working with civil society actors in Indonesia to share their experiences in Middle East and to have their experience be able to inform that part of the world. And in Latin America, Brazil has exchanged its past military rule to become a model democracy with world-recognized expertise on social inclusion, public involvement, and local government financing, among many other aspects that are making that democracy more stable and prosperous. The Obama administration has shown on a range of issues international leadership, but it has also shown that international leadership doesn't always mean that you charge ahead while you loudly implore others to follow you. At a time when shared international challenges require collaborative and collective problem solving, this administration has sought to identify where the U.S. interests and values are best pursued by vocal action, and where we achieve more by facilitating or encouraging others to share the burden of leadership. As a native Bolivian, I have witnessed the power and the knowledge that is shared among neighbors. One can learn a great deal from those that have been through transition and democracy. And this can be one way to mobilize societies and mobilize political leaders. The Obama administration has prioritized this idea of a peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, and to be able to recognize that sometimes our leadership is best exhibited by knowing when to drive and when to facilitate an exchange among friends. In closing, I am reminded of the Tunisian fruit vendor, Mohamed Bouazizi, who out of desperation for himself, he set himself on fire on that fateful day in January. I've known many people like Mr. Bouazizi. I know many of you in this room also have. He was a man who worked in a vegetable fruit market. He had few needs, and he had even fewer luxuries in this world. When the police confiscated his produce scale that he used to weigh his produce, they took part of his livelihood away from him. I am sure no doubt felt powerless in the face of a corrupt government and overwhelming security services. His act of despair sparked a democratic revolution which seized an entire region, highlighting the potent well of frustration in the Middle East and in North Africa. Mr. Bouazizi's death and the revolutions he helped spark remain a powerful call to renew our commitment to human rights and democracy in the Middle East and around the world. We no doubt have a long way to go in the achievement of our goals, and there are many challenges that remain. But we are making progress. Our narrative with Muslim communities is changing. We are engaging with civil society on a new and unprecedented level. And we have re-engaged as leaders in an international discussion of human rights, demonstrating that the United States is committed to promoting and protecting the values upon which our own nation was founded. Thank you.